Welcome to the Grow Your Practice podcast. Hi, I'm your host, Chad Madden, owner of Madden Physical Therapy and Breakthrough. Join me each week as we dive into the best practices, systems, principles, tips, and tricks to help you grow your private practice. Hi, this is Chad Madden with the Grow Your Practice podcast. And in this episode, we're going to get into a webinar that we did with private practice owner Lauren Masi. Lauren has 2 clinic locations in California. You'll hear her unique story, and really what we take a deep dive into is once you are hiring, once you are able to get that new hire on board, that new clinician on board, how do we fill their schedule as quickly as possible? So I know that's a common fear. Owners will think things along the lines of, I'm afraid to hire because I'm not sure my new patient flow or my visit flow, my census is going to remain where I need it to be. Lauren crushes that here. Very valuable. I love her viewpoints that she shares. As you're listening to this, if you're looking for more tools and best practices on hiring and marketing, you can go over to getbreakthrough.com/resources. And we put some valuable tools over there for you, the private practice owner, so that you can compete in today's market. And with that, let's hear, again, this special episode with Lauren Masi. So question number 1, you can type this in the chat. Do you plan to hire this year? So we'll go with a clinician. And what's your confidence level in being able to hire and fill that clinician's schedule? So for example, we have 4 therapists that we're aiming to hire here within the next 6 months here in 2022. And we are, I would say 95% confident that we can, once we hire them, that we can fill their schedule within 90 days. What do you have, Lauren?
Yes, we're probably aiming for at least 2 this year, 2 more PTs. And we're just struggling with hiring not only the PTs, but even our, qualified front office staff to get the schedules full.
Yeah. I'm going to put my headphones on only because we've been getting a lot of sirens from the fire hall across the way. So, so you said 2, and as soon as you can hire them, you're highly confident that you're going to fill their schedules right away. Mm-hmm. All right. So, and this is correct, Lauren. You opened your 2nd location in January.
Yep, just 2 weeks ago.
Lovely. How you doing?
Good. Great.
Any numbers or any ideas you can share with us in terms of what you have 2 clinicians there, correct?
We have 2.5 clinicians. One of ours, we have another part-time who just came over. I'm actually, the one I hired was for my first location. The most recent PT hire was actually for the other location as well. But no, we're filling the schedule. Like I said, right now we're actually struggling to keep up with, and a good problem to have. Chad and I talked about it yesterday. I need more people to schedule, like just getting back to people in a timely manner.
Great. So some common hiring mistakes that Lauren and I, and I'm sure the other owners here have made as well. The first one is this fear, trepidation that once we hire, that our visits might not stay, that demand that we've generated over time with our marketing systems, that somehow we'll have a lapse and a decline in new patients or visits, treatment demand coming through. Number 2 here is if this is our first or our second clinician hire, we might be thinking, everybody wants to see me, right? We have that ego-based self-employed mentality. Really the barrier there is that we have this limited viewpoint that everybody in the world wants to see us. So that can block us. And raise your hand as you're guilty with each one of these. So Lauren, when you first became a practice owner, you purchased an existing practice and they had 4 clinicians?
Correct.
Were you one of those clinicians?
Yes.
So you got to skip over mistake number 2 here, right?
Yes, but I run into it now. I mean, I think my way around it now, though, too, is to say like, hey, I've hired everybody here. I've trained all of them. So they're all going to be, good. And if you have any problems, then let me know and I can step in. So as long as I keep myself available, if there's any issues, and through some of the follow-up quality assurance emails that we have sent out through Breakthrough for, I answer a lot of those. So, and it's me answering it. So I think that personal touch, they're fine seeing other people as long as they know they can reach me if needed.
Yeah. So you're not providing all the treatment, but you also didn't abandon everybody at the same time. Cool. The third one here is I don't have any open positions today, so I don't need to think about sourcing. I know if you're here right now, my guess is that you're actively hiring. I know the marketplace has changed dramatically. I recall 2 years ago we had, and we had been running this forever, we had a pipeline of PTAs that we weren't even running ads. We just had, I think there were 9 PTAs that we had that were at the time pre-pandemic. Now that we're losing PTAs faster. We haven't changed our compensation or anything, but yeah, at least in our area, PTAs are fleeing. We do have a mini pipeline for PTs, which is kind of a unique position to be in. But what changes have you seen over the last 2 years, Lauren?
It's been much harder for us to hire. I mean, it's taking on average, fastest 3 months, but usually closer to 6 to 9 for us to find a hire. So we are keeping ads up year round through Indeed. We've turned to using a recruiter for our most recent hire. And even through a recruiter, it took us 3 months to get somebody. Our first hit from the recruiter took us 3 months. It's really slow.
Yep. So the big takeaway there is always be hiring, right? Regardless of the marketplace conditions. Number 4 here is I'm worried that costs are going to go up if I hire more. So through Breakthrough, I get to talk with a lot of owners. Usually owners that are more advanced in their private practice journey, they realize that if I have 2,000 square feet today and I have 2 clinicians, that when I add the 3rd clinician, my administrative costs don't go up, my space costs don't go up, usually my marketing costs don't go up. Those things across the board, we actually get a decrease or a spreading of the expenses across 3 clinicians instead of 2. So it's usually worthwhile to hire. And I know, Lauren, yesterday when we were speaking, you said something that I wrote down that's pretty much the same way that I think about it as well, with that the cost of not hiring somebody is significantly more than what most of us assume. So how do you think through that?
We did a straight, and I don't have the exact numbers in front of us. We literally looked at the income that we would provide by the increased visits, assuming you get their schedule up and going as fast as possible. 3 months, we lose tens of thousands of dollars in a heartbeat. So if for any reason that onboarding a PT went slow and their schedule wasn't filled, I look at that, and we, again, don't usually have that problem, but use that for training time. Make that a better clinician so they're more productive once they are up to speed and it's not wasted time. I think the other thing we ran into, and I don't know if it'll come up a little bit later, but I'm afraid the patient visits may not always be this high, kind of going along if they build it, or was it if you build it, they will come kind of thing. Like we've run into, if you don't have the spots on the schedule to put people, then they disappear. And it's, you just lose them. There's no choice. I'd rather have available spots to book patients and have it be a little lighter because it fills once it's there.
Yeah, I always see the trickle of 3 visits a week to 2 visits a week, which we're doing in some locations right now, to 1 to, maybe we'll do a checkup 2 weeks from now or something like that, the early discharges and that visit suppression, plan of care, negotiation downward. And the last one here is, I don't know how, so once I have them on board, I don't know how to ramp up. We'll be covering that here specifically in a few slides, in a few minutes. So first question is, how do I know when it's time to hire? And Lauren, it seems like it's always time to hire for you. Have you ever had a time in your private practice career where you weren't necessarily hiring immediately, as urgent as you are right now?
Yes, we track a lot of statistics. So on each PT, and then as a company as a whole, we're running, percent full, percent arrival numbers. We have our targets. So clearly, if we're coming in way under those after we've vetted that, we're doing everything we're supposed to keep the schedules full, it just might not be appropriate. On the flip side of that, we want to get patients in as soon as possible. So I think our standard is if for more than 3 weeks, we can't get an eval in for more than 1 week, then we're already thinking about it. We want to try to get people in within the same week if possible. So at times when our wait list has just been so far out, and patients let you know too, when they're calling and they're like, what, you can't get me in for this long, you're losing them to competitors if you can't get them in. So
Yep. Yeah, that's devastating. That that bothers me for sure. I know a few years ago, we would think about it in terms of the last clinician we hired once they were 50% full. So let's say we have a location with 4 clinicians, assuming the first 3 are full. Once we get that 4th clinician 50% full, then it was time for us to actively really pour the coals on sourcing and start thinking about bringing that next clinician on, knowing that it's going to take 90 to 180 days to do that.
And for us right now, with the market the way it is, that's why we keep our ad running. It's more if I have something that looks like a promising hit, like when the resume first comes in, even though I haven't started the interview process, that's when I'm like, hey, can we actually hire somebody? Can we make this happen? Because if you have a willing clinician, then you push for it, versus usually it's the other way where you just can't hire in time.
Yeah. Perfect. So the other thing that Lauren just mentioned in terms of lost income. So this is a framework that I use when we're thinking about investing in the practice and growing. So 5 ways to invest in your practice. Number 1 is you can buy more space. Lauren just opened an additional location. So how many square feet did you add there, Lauren?
Just under 5,000.
You added 5,000 more square feet. Mm-hmm. Wow, that's a lot. And it's California pricing too.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So yeah, whether we're looking at expanding an existing clinic from 2,000 square feet to 4,000 square feet, or we're looking at opening an additional facility, that would be an investment in space. Next one is personnel. That's obviously what we're talking about and focused about here. You can invest in marketing, buying market share, various ways to do that, buying more equipment, treatment equipment, your ability to deliver more services. And then you can also invest in improving your systems as well. So yeah.
Make one comment on the space thing real quick. One thing that I didn't think about early on becoming a practice owner, but it paid off well, was with our first space, or when you're looking for a new space, we always wanted first floor access, but our first space had smaller suites around us. And we did kind of inquire as to what's in there, when are those leases due? Because if nothing else, especially we actually expanded that one location 3 times. We took over suites as other people's leases ended until we had the whole bottom floor of that building, which was almost 8,000 square feet at our first location. So it also helps because if when someone's lease is up, it can push you a little bit to be like, is it time to jump on that and force myself to expand if things are going well?
Yes, we're going through that same exact problem solving right now, Lauren. Great point there. And essentially what this comes down to long term for us is we're playing a game as practice owners. If you're thinking about growing and expanding, leaving a greater impact in your area through the services that you provide, is we have to pay attention to those first 2, space and personnel utilization. And at least for what we're talking about here is, so when I'm looking at 5,000 square feet, how many visits a week potential could you be doing in that space, Lauren?
We're hoping to get about 500-ish.
Perfect. So you're going to grow to that over the next, and I'll ask you, how long do you expect that to?
As fast as possible, but that's probably getting those 2 more PTs on here. So if I have, 5.5 plus PTs here, we stagger our schedules. We're open 6:30 in the morning to 7 at night. So we stagger and we have alternative work weeks and things like that.
Cool. And so 12 months, 24 months till full maturity there. So we're constantly juggling and thinking about how do we get to maximal space utilization, because that anytime we make an investment in our practice, if we're getting a return, if we're nearing that full potential, then it's an asset to the business, right? It's adding to the business. The other one, the underutilized space or underutilized personnel or marketing that we're not following up on, or getting a return from. They're liabilities to the practice. So ultimately, for all of us to keep our doors open, especially in a lower margin business like physical therapy, we have to pay attention to that, and have less liabilities than we do assets that are returning more revenue and income to the practice. How do you think about that, Lauren?
I agree with you.
Okay,
I mean, yeah, yes, you're always trying to leverage what you have. I mean, it's the ever living struggle of PT. I think for us, the reason I kind of hesitated too is, we've supplemented with other services. So I have massage therapy, I have personal training and Pilates. So that kind of divvies up my space a little bit. I think that was a big mistake that I made in the first location, is we kind of gave too much space or square footage out of our first location to, say, our wellness department that only had, 1.5 practitioners, where at the end of the day, I was like, hey, I can get more PTs in here and make it more productive.
Yeah, smart. So the three-step process for filling, when you do bring a clinician on, the way, and Lauren and I talked about this yesterday, and we're pretty comparable. So 90 days before hiring, you want to think about ramping up patient demand. So from the sounds of it, Lauren already has that patient demand ramped up. She has, plenty of physician referrals in place from years of experience. She's actively marketing to her past patient list and has patient reactivations coming in, word of mouth. And she also does a lot to the general public through workshops. We pretty much have the same exact thing. And the way that I think about it is we have levers that we can pull whenever we need to ramp up the demand. Any comment on that, Lauren?
Yeah, I think having those levers and also knowing who you want to target it to. So again, do I need to pull the one to my physician referral sources, or do I need to pull the one to my past patients, or up my marketing budget for the workshops or things like that? It's just, you make those decisions based on that current state.
Yep.
Hey, podcast listeners, when we make assumptions about others, it's just not fair. In spite of that, I'm going to make an assumption about you. You have a growth mindset. You want to help more people, leave a bigger impact, build a better practice. Am I close? If I'm right, then I have a unique offer that I think you'll be interested in. But first, if you're a regular listener, you probably know that this is brought to you by Breakthrough, the leading platform for private practice growth. Breakthrough's mission is to help people in pain get back to normal, live healthier, and do it naturally. The best way to do this is by empowering private practice owners like you to grow your business through direct-to-consumer marketing. If you're a practice owner with a growth mindset, you'd benefit from a risk-free consultation with a Breakthrough growth expert. Go to getbreakthrough.com/podcast offer to take advantage of this unique opportunity. On that call, you'll learn the key principles of how practice owners are helping more people, creating a bigger impact, and building better businesses with Breakthrough systems. As an added bonus, the team at Breakthrough is giving a $50 Amazon gift card to any of the podcast listeners who attend this growth consultation. Sign up for your growth consultation and $50 gift card at getbreakthrough.com/podcast offer. Again, that's getbreakthrough.com/podcast offer.
Perfect. So phase number 2, or stage 2, step 2, I guess it is. After you make that hire and that new clinician starts, there's onboarding and getting up to speed. So the way that we have our program is we have clinical directors that serve as mentors, and then they are mentoring that, whether it's a new grad or somebody with a few years of experience, clinician with a few years of experience, they're at least onboarding, understanding how we operate, what our systems look like, our processes look like. What do you do, Lauren?
Same thing. So all of our new hires, despite experience, are generally followed closely by our clinic director and myself for the first 90 days. Then if I have somebody who has a lot of experience in outpatient orthopedics, specifically our niche, they might be done. But most of our hires are onboarded for some kind of mentoring program for up to a year, depending on their background. And we have ways to kind of filter that and decide.
Great. So for us, we'll extend our mentorship for entry-level DPTs a little bit longer, up to a year, and very much in line with what you're doing, Lauren. And then our aim is that 90 days after hire, that they have a full schedule. So for us, and I know we all have different length of treatment, visit, per visit and everything else, but we have a target of 50 visits per week for that new clinician, that we want them to hit that by 90 days. Usually they're around that. Sometimes it's a little bit lower, in the lower 40s, but they're actively being mentored with an experienced clinician, usually the director, to help them look at their schedule to manage the full caseload. That's great. So I'm blanking on what we talked about here, but the 2.5 clinicians, what did you do for the new at the new location? And then if you can talk about what you did at the original location for when you brought in new staff there, Lauren, that would be great. Your experience doing that.
I mean, all of our new hires pretty much follow that same trajectory where they come in. Day one is mostly, admin, HR, onboarding, but we open up the schedule. Depending on their schedule, they are allowed to see 4 to 5 new evals a day, depending on if they're working an 8-hour or 10-hour day. But we give them extra, what we call administrative time, just for paperwork and stuff. So the first 2 weeks, we give them an extra hour of paperwork time every day. The next 2 weeks, they have an extra half hour a day beyond what a normal PT would get on our staff. So kind of going back to that 90-day things, by 30 days, their schedule is open to reflect what a normal full-time therapist would be without the extra paperwork and training times, minus the pre-organized mentoring, which is usually not more than an extra hour a week, say with me or someone. Our target for a full-time therapist is 61 visits a week. And again, we aim for 93% full. I would say, at our lowest right now, I think even our new hire, I think she was at like 85 for her first week, which wasn't terrible. By 90 days for sure, they are expected to be at that 61 visits a week. We also have a second layer to that, depending on most of our PTs by 90 days are also put on a different kind of payment module where they're reimbursed for a performance pay model at that 90-day mark. So they also want to be productive by then. And I think having that drive definitely has helped. They're more enticed. Once we know that they've gotten all the foundational things, they know our systems and procedures. That's why we don't mess with that in the first 90 days. There's no one who comes on starting on that model, because we want them to make sure that they learn the basics. But then it's great to have that buy-in to, like you said, get the complete plans of care, call those people who have dropped off their schedule. And then I'm monitoring that from above too with any new hire to make sure, do they have a higher than normal amount of drop-offs? Do they need some training on that, capturing the plan of care, getting the patient buy-in? I'm monitoring all the paperwork and billing that goes out in the beginning, just to kind of spot check all that, make sure it's compliant and up to our standards.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I know for us, that is the largest, probably the biggest misconception that therapists have, is that I'm great, I provide high quality of care. Everybody that I give a plan of care to, they're going to complete that plan of care, meet all their goals, and go tell the world about it. And that's not what happens, right? At least in the beginning, until their competencies are up. So I know we do an audit exercise, and we have a clinical director now. She has converted 100% in her last 4 workshops, and has grown a clinic quickly from 0 to, I think there are 140, 150 visits. She's hiring her 4th clinician right now. She's done that in 9 months. And but when she first started with us, I had asked her, I said, what do you think your graduation rate is? And she said, pretty high, 80, 90%. And we had her go back and do an audit, and it was 40%. So out of 20 new patients, 8 had graduated, and she was devastated. And she crushed it after that. Just having that awareness in there was a very big deal for her, and really career changing, just to have that. So how do you do something similar when you're working with them one-on-one? How do you think through and help them manage that?
So I guess 2 things kind of touching. So the drop-off list, which for us is, every Monday they get a list of patients who have no future follow-ups. And we say an average full-time PT should never have more than 10 patients on that list. So that's one way. So I can kind of track week over week. And then we have our procedures for handling that. How fast are they able, and how much do they care? Are they the ones making that first call? Because patients are more accountable to their PT than they are the front desk anyway, even though we say, we understand you're busy, so you can have the front desk call or text the patient, but you'll see who kind of takes the initiative on that. And I think the preconceived notion, like you said, I've had much more senior PTs who think, yes, I'm God and people will come in and I don't have to work on my interaction skills and plan of care. And their drop-off lists have been way longer, and then of course there's the new grads who just don't know yet how to do that. So I've had to train kind of on both ends that really the first day, like eval day, the things you have to cover, make sure they're involved in determining the plan of care, that sort of thing. But we do run a statistic on dropout rate. And on our discharge notes, we have boxes that they have to kind of bucket people to say, who did the discharge? Was it a PT discharge, a patient initiated, a drop off, or a medical reason? And then we have them summarize the percent of goals met. So we have like 100%, then we do 85 to 99%, and then below that, because then I can go run stats a myriad of ways. So yes, you might have said these people are done, but are you taking them to 100%, or are they early discharges, or are the patients telling you that they're good enough, and you're losing those last potential 2 or 3 visits on every plan of care. So yeah, that was when I presented that too, it's stunning when you actually look at what, an office's dropout rate is, and you're considering all the time spent, not only from the clinician, but intake paperwork, things like that. And especially what kills me are like that you did all that for an eval and then they never come back. And you're like, it's a lot of money up front. So
yeah, I don't hear this much anymore, but I know there was a trend. This is probably 10 to 15 years ago with some of our therapists that there was a game of like, it was a significant change. So like once we had a significant change, then we discharged them. I was like, well, what's a significant change? And I think it was defined that time as like a 50% pain reduction. So we were discharging people at like three visits. And what I would always say is like, do you know how much work we put an investment we put in to get that physician referral, to have that person attend a workshop, to have them schedule an appointment, have them schedule a free screen or an IE, to sign up for the plan of care, and then you're discharging that person. And what is insanity is if you ever follow up with those patients that were discharged early, they usually go to another type of treatment. If they feel like they've been abandoned in any way, they'll go see the doctor down the street, or the chiropractor down the street, or the massage therapist, or whatever it might be, or another physical therapist in many cases. And it's that only has to happen a couple times before you put some processes and around that. So
we also I'll run a statistic, and again, I do this quarterly if I'm on it, but at least twice a year, because you're trying to look at a whole plan of care per PT, the average plan of care length. So that's including any of the early drop-offs and including all those post-op that might be here forever, and I can compare the PTs to one another, but also to national norm of average plan of care. So if I see outliers there, the ones who are seeing patients for forever, I'm making sure on a compliance point they're okay, or I can kind of say, hey, your average plan of care is 5-6 visits. That's way below not only our clinic average, but the national average at, just under 11. So,
yeah. Awesome. Love the checks and balances there. So we're going to put a poll up here, and then we'll open this up for Q&A. What do you need the most help with right now in your practice? So, I need help attracting new patients. I need help converting more leads and filling that therapist schedule as quickly as possible. I need help reactivating past patients, all the above, or none. You're just like Lauren, and your practice consistently has a waiting list. So you can just click on the poll there.
I just want to say, just because we have a waiting list, we still got hit with, all the holiday cancellations and the COVID illnesses, so it's not always perfect. But then, like I said, it's as fast as we can get people called and get them in. And that's been our next issue, is just other staffing too, not just PTs.
Yeah. So, well, I'll open this up with my first question for you. What all are you doing for marketing? Because obviously you've done a lot there in terms of creating a reputation within your community. You have, huge rising tide effect. It sounds like you're doing everything across the board, from physician marketing to direct to consumer. What are you doing there to create that patient demand?
We certainly are involved with Breakthrough. So I have 3 funnels going with Breakthrough right now for workshops. We have internal to past patients kind of reactivation, keep in touch kind of thing. So we do handwritten cards, thank you cards. to our new patients when they come in, or if we know that, someone sent a friend or family referral, just awareness of that. We write thank you cards that's one thing I have my new hires do, to get their name connected to our brand. If, if one of them ends up having great success for a certain doctor, we have them handwrite to the referral sources for the evals that they see a thank you for the referral of so-and-so. I look forward to working with them. Please let me know if you need anything. And then beyond the first, again, we usually do that the first 90 days, and then the PTs don't have to do those. They always can, because then there's another line of, we have a bonus path that they can take. But as a company, all new doctors get letters from me and potentially calls to just say hi and see what needs they have. We still do birthday cards, mailers to the patients. Yeah, Yelp reviews, Google reviews. We definitely try to, social media has been so big lately.
Great. So you're doing huge amounts of communication to your past patient list and physician referrals, professional referrals, and then you're also doing your advertising for workshops, the funnels. Just for everybody, if you're not aware of that, a funnel is basically what are the three you're doing? Rotator cuff, back and knee, or something along those lines, Lauren. Great. The trifecta there. So you're running advertisements, likely on Facebook and Instagram, driving to workshops, which is a conversion mechanism. Get your name out there in the community, creates really ultimately a branding effect that you can measure by providing a valuable service to the community with information on how they can get treatment, what successful treatment looks like for rotator cuff and shoulder issues, knee problems, and back pain as well. Great. So we'll go through this pretty quick, but yeah, in terms of the systems, the direct-to-consumer marketing systems that Lauren and I use in our practices, we're leading with patient education and our advertising. What that does is, rather than just create a branding effect solely, we're providing a valuable service to the community. And when we're talking about cold traffic, educated leads are the best leads that are coming through, because they're spending time with us and they view us as the authority, the celebrity and expert for rotator cuff problems or balance issues, or whatever the specialty that we're talking about delivering material on is. The next one is you want to go through the market message media match. We talk about this in almost all of our online training, but the market is specifically who you're marketing to. The message is what we're saying in our ads should be patient focused, not clinician focused, not clinician language. And then the media is really, it's direct mail, radio, television, billboards, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Google ads, etc., and how we're reaching them. And essentially what this slide says, this principle, is that those three things must be in alignment in order for you to have effective marketing. And then finally, go ahead, Lauren.
On that last slide, one thing too is I hear a lot of people who've always said, get away from direct mail, stop doing the birthday cards or patient mailed letters. For us, we kept it. It was huge for us because our demographic, we see 40 to 50% Medicare at certain times of the year. Like, they aren't all on social media. So they really appreciate that kind of paper mail, snail mail style stuff. So we a couple of years ago, we took like a year or two off, and we were like, nope, that was a bad move. We needed to keep that in for the marketing. And I think whole big picture too is, even with the hiring thing, is, making sure that it's very easy when you look at your bottom line and you're looking at your budget to say, I'm going to skimp on my marketing because I need to save money because my profit per visit is miserable as a PT. But if you need to fill that schedule, front that money now. It's going to come back when you get those visits. So
completely agree, especially on the direct mail. We did the same thing a little while, 8 or 9 years ago, shut down direct mail. Horrible decision. Saw our numbers drop, put it back in right away. The other thing is, it's really easy to stand out there now because a lot of companies killed their direct mail. So it's easier to stand out in the mailbox. You have children, Lauren, correct? So if they within the past year on their birthday, did they receive like a birthday card or anything from any of your relatives?
Yeah.
Well, fair.
Yes, relatives. They love opening mail. They love
Yeah,
colorful mail too. You know, I still get some direct mail that comes in like a white standard envelope, and that's not eye catching. But the postcards, I mean, and there's so many, yeah, like you said, there's so many different ways to make it eye catching and make it stand out. And
yeah, I know our kids just light up when they get a handwritten card or anything in the mail at all, because it's so rare for them, right? Yeah, so essentially, again, these three things have to be in alignment, and direct mail is an easy way to stand out. Providing value in your online media, also an easy way to stand out. You just want to make sure they're in alignment. And the last one is, you want to think through automation. So for us, we're running right now, I believe 10 or 12 workshops a month for our practices, and it's a lot of leads. We have people coming in from direct mail, from online advertising, from TV, from, what's the other big one? Print ads as well. And there's important, if you're going to do that type of advertising, when you market direct to the consumer, is you have to be able to track those leads as they come through, the conversations that you're having, and ultimately when they land on that first appointment. However, whatever you're doing in terms of conversion there. So there has to be some sort of automation, some sort of follow-up, those personal touch points that help somebody who has no idea what physical therapy can do for them, or your healthcare services can do for them, and then ultimately where they land on the schedule. The days that we grew up with in private practice, where Debbie, the receptionist, would walk over and pull the script off the fax machine and then call the patient to schedule, those days are over for the vast majority of the new patients that we're going to be seeing in our clinics. So we have to learn how to catch up, and that is really through automation. There's powerful software available that you can use to manage from the time somebody responds to an ad the whole way through until they become a patient. Yeah, so we at Breakthrough, we have an all-in-one patient demand platform. Again, it's exactly what Lauren and I are using to fill our clinics, to fill our clinician schedules. When we do get that hire in, we don't want it to be a liability to the practice. We want it to be an asset to the practice, and help them get it full as quickly as possible.
one note on that too. I mean, I think obviously we want them as full as possible. We did, I think it was 1 or 2 hires ago. I made the mistake of actually letting them, I would say, almost get too full too fast, because then those other checks and balances of the documentation and the billing was harder to keep up on. And they went through that, oh my gosh, overwhelm, slight burnout, and then we kind of backed off a little bit, but it was more detrimental to the big picture of me making sure foundationally they were sound. So I'm just pick a number that's maybe slightly below. Like I said, our target is 93% full. That's why I'm fine with exactly where my newest hire came in at about 85 for her first week. That's fine, because again, she's still learning what's expected of the documentation and the billing. And so.
Yeah, the key word here I think about is control. So maybe I misspoke that, it's great if we have lines and lines of people like we see in all the advertisements for marketing agencies of people waiting out our door. But yeah, we want to control that flow more than anything else by pulling that set of levers, whatever we need to do. So if we need 4 new patients a week for that therapist coming in, we can gauge that effort based on historical systems performance to have those, roughly the 4 new patients coming in, and elevate the demand as they get more and more competent managing their schedule.
And in private practice, I mean, we get so many referrals from past patients, friends, and family that we want that good experience. And again, we hear a lot of, I don't want to go to that other clinic because it is just a mill, or I felt like it wasn't personal. I mean, we get a lot by maintaining that personal touch, and we've maintained, half-hour follow-up visits where some of our local people are seeing 3, 4, sometimes even 5 patients an hour. So we just stand out. And also the square footage thing, I was just actually in New York visiting another clinic, and walking around, the layout of the clinics are so different, but for where we are, like we stand out because our rooms are a little bigger than in other places. There is decor, there is, colors on the walls, not just plain white. And that hugely makes us stand out in our area. So being aware of what your competitors look like and what their models are, make sure you stick to that and stay true to your brand.
Right on. The along those same lines, when in terms of maintaining your brand. So you have a brand that you're putting forth, Lafayette Physical Therapy. By the way, nice background. I know we talked about that yesterday. So you're doing something to attract. You're ultimately converting, and you talk through the attraction systems that you have in place. Your staff is well trained. I know you're doing the large portion of the workshops, if not all the workshops, but you have your clinicians and your front desk, the people on the phones that are interacting with potential patients. They're trained to ultimately convert those people that are interested, whether they're past patients being reactivated, physician referrals, or people from the cold traffic from the general public, to ultimately convert over. And then, Lauren, you've really crushed the measure portion of this, where you talked about being able to take a look at what is going on within the practice, whether we're talking about graduation rates or plan of care completion, et cetera. You're doing a solid job of that. So is this what we have here in terms of the flywheel? Is that kind of how you think about growing your practice? Or, and I know this is very biased to Breakthrough, but how do you think about it?
No, this is very organized. I don't think it's this organized in my head, but but yes, no, I mean, and Breakthrough has been great for us in that, and a lot of the things, the tracking of things has always been a difficult part for us. We were doing a ton in Excel spreadsheets, and when we looked at that next level, it was like, getting huge corporations like Salesforce to build out things for us, which was astronomically expensive. So we didn't go that route, but I think Breakthrough was a good middle ground. It's huge. And I think too, that follow-up to a point, we've had it, some patients don't like all the follow-up, it's too much. And then you unsubscribe them from things and you back off. But I think it definitely helps, the touch points of, 7 touch points sometimes to get someone to come to your clinic. I mean, and that can be these emails, that can be the phone calls. But if you give up too soon, and that's something that I think most practices do because we don't have the time or the money or the resources or the staffing to do it, it's made a big difference. And I think that has set us up. I mean, since I'm plugging Breakthrough, patting the back, but I mean, since we started, we've had, we can always actually follow up with our leads more than we do. And we would have that much better of a response and more patients coming to us. But it's helped us. The biggest reason we even started with Breakthrough was the ebbs and flows in a normal year of patient visits, where sometimes we'd have all the staffing, but then not enough visits. And then we'd have too many visits, but not enough staff to do it. And we've definitely in the last year plus really fixed the fact that the referrals are always there, like you said, and we can get more if we can do more. And now we're just trying to catch up and keep up with the staffing. And that's a great problem to have.
Yeah, I hope this doesn't get lost on everybody, but when it is time for you to ramp up, Lauren, Debbie Lamson, who I believe is in Idaho, she's a practice owner, or Jared Pugmire is the practice owner. Debbie Lamson runs his runs his marketing. She shared something that she did through the software, the Breakthrough software, where she went back for I think the last 6 months, and anybody who didn't show up to their first appointment or come to the workshop, this reactivation that she did, our group who heard that a week or two ago in Orlando just came back and did that. And I know the one marketer, they had 12 reactivations in 24 hours just from a simple touch point and follow up, because we have the capacity to treat it and handle that flow in one office right now. So yeah, what you're talking about, never shut off marketing completely, right? And just create that demand long term, and then you can ramp up based on how we're doing with personnel capacity.
I think the other thing for personnel that stood out for us is like, we always struggled on and off. We've had a marketing person, but again, to hire a marketing person who wasn't part of our culture, who knew enough about us and PT, never worked out, and they're just coming from a different mind frame. But being able to justify the fact that we are spending more on, admin and marketing, if we're going to call it that, for our schedulers to do some of that follow-up, it was hard. It's a hard, some people would argue we have too much, in that, on the admin side, but I'm like, if that's what we need to fill the schedules, that's kind of been my biggest balance looking at the budgeting stuff lately.
Yep. So final poll here for you, and then we'll open this up for Q&A. Looks like we have some comments in there and some questions. If you're interested in the same type of patient demand strategies and systems that have helped Lauren fill her team schedule that we're talking about right now, you can simply click yes there on the poll, and our team, they'll follow up with you. So we do have some questions here. Oh, I don't see where it opened up.
I can read out the questions if that helps, Chad. We have some questions from the audience here.
Yep, great.
So let's see. Carlisle asked, how much extra paperwork time do you give new therapists?
I'm taking that one first. Our standard for all staff, not just new hire, in a 40-hour week, they usually have about 2.5 hours. So usually it's like the last half hour of every day we give them paperwork time. So our new hires on top of that, the first 2 weeks-ish, they get 1 extra hour every day that they're here. So an extra up to 5 hours, but that's also based on the fact that they're still coming up to speed, maybe finishing up some bits of pieces of training and HR stuff, but also the fact that, my PT that I just hired had 19 evals her first week. So just learning our system and the number of patient eval paperwork, she needed that paperwork time. So I don't regret giving it. We do that the first 2 weeks. Then the next 2 weeks, you get an extra half hour a day. And then I usually will ask them, do you want a half hour a day, or do you want, me to combine those to give you an hour here and an hour there? Because sometimes the half hours get eaten into by patients running late or whatever. So I kind of work with them on how they want that. But then after that first 30 days, pending nothing unforeseen, they're no extra paperwork and back to their standard staff.
And after 90 days, they're converted over to essentially a highly incentivized compensation model.
Yeah, performance pay model. Mm-hmm.
Great. Yeah, you're very generous, Lauren, with your documentation time. Yeah.
Well, I mean, on the new hire, like I said, but I wanted her to see that many evals, right? So I'm like, okay, you're going to see those evals to get those patients started. I'll give you more paperwork time now. But otherwise, yeah. And we get pushback on the half hour a day for our staff. Do you give any paperwork time for standard stuff?
So all of our therapists, we do it through the ramp up, right? So in the beginning, they're seeing a limited number of evals as an entry level. So they may be limited to 3 or 4 new patients per week in the very beginning, and they don't have an immediate full caseload over the first 60 or 90 days. They're going to build up to that roughly 45 to 55 visits a week. So there's built-in time there, but we don't carve it out at the end of the day. Pennsylvania, all clinicians are salaried, which California has a different set of.
They're not required to be. Ours are. I'm trying to think. Yes, except for our new grads. So we'll do hourly in the beginning during our 90 days for some of our new grads, depending on their PTLA status or whatever else. But yes, our goal is to get all of our PTs salaried.
Yeah, I can tell you when we were on an hourly rate, we had a lot of therapists pulling extra hours for documentation time.
Yep, that's why we wanted to switch.
Yeah, and then when we went salaried, that went away pretty quick. So we do a 39.5-hour treatment week. And then, for the most part, documentation is done during the visit, during the encounter.
How long are your follow-ups?
Same. So they're essentially scheduled on the 40 minutes, every 40. Yeah.
We have another question from Frank. How many available visits are on the average PT schedule?
For us, we have like half-hour patient spots, we'll call them, minus the paperwork time on a 40-hour week. There's 72 spots. And then because we expect them to be about 93% full, that's where our target of 61 visits per week comes into play. It gets a little skewed. You have to be aware, we've averaged out the fact that in a normal staff PT week, they might see 5 or 6 evals, because evals are 2 spots, because we do hour evals and half-hour follow-ups.
Yeah. So I'll only because I've been in this conversation already, and I've heard some crazy numbers of clinicians doing 100 plus visits per week, and then we talk about how many units they're billing. So I can share that our clinicians are billing between 240 and 300 units per week on it. That's the general range. So it depends on the clinician, but if they're seeing 4.5 if they're billing 4.5 units per visit, they're seeing 60 visits per week. That would be 300, roughly 270, 300 units. So that's kind of the peak of what we're doing. But they're allowed to manage their own schedule also. So they decentralize it. In general, they're scheduling a patient every 40 minutes.
We've gone back and forth with tracking units. It's a little messier on our side because we have some capitated contracts and things like that where it doesn't always pan out to be worth it. So it's.
Yeah, we try to be agnostic. I feel like I should do a disclaimer here because we all have different practice acts. Go to your compliance. So whoever you work with in terms of healthcare compliance, make sure you have a conversation with them. We work with BCMS and also Paul Welk all the time to make sure we're not violating anything there.
We work with BCMS as well.
Perfect.
Robin sent through a question for Lauren. She's asking, what's an example of your performance pay model?
We use Onus One as a kind of calculation platform. There's 3 different tiers. The PTs can they're kind of like if you want to call them risk tiers. The PTs can pick what tier they want. Meaning, if you pick the gold tier, the best tier, then if you see more visits, you get paid exponentially, so to speak, more. If you see less though, you get paid less. And then the bronze or the lower plan is less risk, which just means paycheck, is about the same kind of week to week, assuming you see an average number of patients. You get to set a lot of your own parameters. So we actually set a minimum threshold that's slightly below our target, but covers their cost. And then, it kind of goes from there. It's reach out to them. It's different. It's different in states too. Like we have to set a different minimum base pay because we're in California and it's salaried. So there's a lot of rules, but you get to customize it all with that program directly. And then it just allows for, with the salaried PTs, we ran into this where obviously you're salaried, so I don't have to pay you per hour and you could see more patients if you wanted to, but why would you? Because you're not incentivized to. And I'm not even saying we don't necessarily promote double booking, but say you want to take a vacation next week and you want to get more patients in this week for me, you will get paid for that in this week to maybe offset or help plan, or, Christmas is coming and you want your paycheck to be a little padded and I have other PTs on vacation. You can come in and work more hours, even pick up another half shift again, because we do 10-hour and 5-hour shifts sometimes. Or if you work an 8, you can work a 10 and get a couple more dollars here and there, but it at least fixed that problem for us of maybe inspiring more. And I've had 1 or 2 PTs who've really jumped on that. And then everybody else is like, nope, I'm good with my standard 40 hours. And as long as I'm hitting my basic targets, I'm good. And that's fine. But it protected the company a little bit too. Here in California, 2 years ago, we had to shut down for 5 days due to fires and smoke and things like that. And I had to pay my salaried staff because they showed up for that 1 hour on Monday before we had to shut down. So we have to pay them their full salary for the whole week. And I had no patient visits. So this way now, in this model, they get paid their base minimum salary for that week, because I'm required by law to do that, but it just gave us some protections on the extreme ends of things too.
Yeah, there are some references for those of you that are interested in exploring, different pay models. Jack Stack wrote a few books, Great Game of Business, and Stake in the Outcome, I think, is the other one. And then there's also a book that I believe is no longer published by Les Schwab, who was a pretty savvy business owner in tire sales. Neither one of them are in healthcare services, but you can look at their payment model and make sure that you talk with a good employment attorney based on your state employment laws, that you can apply an incentivization model within your company. But yeah, I'm completely with you there, Lauren, in terms of stake in the game is really the way to go. All right, so I don't see any other questions.
Oh, I see one real quickly for Gloria. What is the national average of treatments before discharge? It's just under 11 the last time I checked. I did not check last year because of COVID. It was bad to trace kind of lengths of plans of care. But right before that, it was like 10 and change.
Yeah. And I had the same number from the last report I looked at. It was like 10.8 or 10.9, something like that. So can I afford to hire talk through that. How can I afford to do marketing? How do you determine if your personnel is over or underutilized? We talk through that as well. So any other questions for Lauren or I before we sign off here? Great. Any parting words, Lauren?
No, thank you for inviting me to do this. And I'm certainly, if anybody wants to reach out to me for any questions, I'm available.
Great. What's the best way for them to?
You can email me. It's lmasi, LMASI .pt at LafayettePT.com. I can put it in the chat box too.
Wonderful. And so catching up, how many available visits are on that? We talked through that. Jorge, how much does breakthrough cost? Yeah, so if you click yes on the poll, what will happen is somebody from Breakthrough will contact you, they'll look at your area, they'll do a market study for you, and they can talk through the different programs that we offer there and what's best for your practice. You have Lauren's email address there. Lauren, you were great. Thank you so much for being on here and sharing your experience. This was awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Remember to visit getbreakthrough.com to access our free resource library designed specifically for private practice growth. While you're there, make sure you register for a complimentary growth assessment to learn about potential opportunities for growth in your local market. Again, thank you for tuning into the Grow Your Practice podcast and supporting our mission to help people in pain get back to normal naturally.